I love all the shenanigans. Hello, booettes and boos. Welcome to Mama Tanya's kitchen, the lunch table. First of all, I just want to say I'm so excited and in deep gratitude to have all of you here with me today in my humble abode, where we are going to enjoy some delicious food. We are going to have some delicious conversation, and we are going to get into some really delicious topics. We are moving into Black August, and I thought, given what we are going through in this current moment in the year of our Lord and Savior Beyonce, 2024, Black August is particularly relevant right now. Now, we know Black August started out in Cali, right? This is about resistance, people connecting to resistance, and particular like Pan-African radical Black liberation, right? Folks were not fucking around, right? We were not quibbling. We were not talking about reform. We were talking about revolution. And the ways that we were doing that was by building community. It was about daily fasting. It was about connecting through your body with intention, right? Because we know that we have to ground and root ourselves for this work that we do. But also more importantly, it's about connecting to the love that we have for one another. So I am here with all of you fabulous beings who are a real representation of what Black August is. And so I just want for us, I want the people to get to know you. I want to get to know you. And this is not about credentials. Tell me who you are as you want people to see you.
You're starting with me.
I am starting with you.
Hi, my name is Fatima. I'm a writer, filmmaker, artist, and blues woman. And by that, I just mean a Southern, spirited, foot stomping, hand clapping.
Yeah. All right. So, as you were saying, introducing who you are, I think a lot of where I am in 33 is finding what defines me other than the activism. I think a lot of this work at my youth was about surviving. And so who I became is a survivor in my title. And so there's a rebirthing that's happening at 33 where I am defining what it means to be in that space of thriving, as you opened up about like what it means in Black August to thrive. So right now I reground myself in root work, plant medicine. I'm an Afro-Caribbean child, so a lot of my being and uprooting was learning about the herbs to heal. And so that's what feels like medicine right now. Medicine and vibration of breath, medicine and movement, dance. I love to dance. That's who I am. And I feel like this global holder, like a container for global issues right now was present for me. And a creative.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes. Nyla, we out here creating. I don't created a meal for y'all today. So last but certainly not least, Lee.
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Lee, they, them. I'm an artist, I'm an educator, I'm an activist, I'm a friend, I'm a traveler, I'm a West Indian, all of these wonderful things. And I'm super excited to be here for this chat today.
Okay. So let's get in to this menu, y'all. So this is an accompaniment that you're looking at. I know y'all are like, I know this bitch did not bring me here to feed me no cabbage. But this is not just cabbage, this is pickles. Okay, and I've made it for you. While I'm not Haitian, Sapase, we give, okay? We big up to Haitians. The first group of enslaved Africans who fought, spilled blood, right, for their liberation from colonizers, the French. So today, as we think about the spirit of Black August and we think about liberation, I wanted to make sure that we brought Haiti into the room with us. Now, one does not eat pickles without griot. Griot is a beautiful, sort of meaty and fatty chunk of pork, usually pork shoulder. She is a nice, dry piece of meat. What else we got on this menu, y'all? Y'all excited? Are you excited? I'm excited. So what we got? What we got over here, Ronnie? put it down on the table. Put it down on the table with the keffiyeh on your arm, which is fitting that my homegirl got the keffiyeh as she puts masakan down on the table. Do we know what masakan is?
No, tell me more.
Masakan is the official dish of Palestine. It is a flatbread, usually made in something called a taboon, right? Which is a clay oven, then it's filled with stones, and then you make the flatbread on top of it. And then you must brush it with good olive oil, because this bread is usually eaten around the time of when the olives have been harvested and pressed. Come on, get into me. I know history, motherfucker. I researched. Don't play with me. We talking food pathways, okay? And Palestine is rich of these stories of food and culture, okay? And then the way that it generally is traditionally eaten is that people will just eat it community style, and you take the bread and you use it to rip off pieces of the chicken. Okay? But you know, for the purposes, I'm still American. That freaks me out a little bit, okay? I don't even like Ethiopian food for that reason. We got some tongs. Please take your individual piece of bread and your individual piece of chicken and put it on your plate. And then I wanted to give you something a little wet for your palate, okay? And what we have here in these beautiful Le Creuset ramekins, plated beautifully by Rane, is something called moula robe. It is the official dish of Sudan. Because we're not gonna sit up here and talk about Palestine, talk about Haiti, and not talk about what's been happening in Sudan for, you know, I can remember the last 20-something years. Some time ago, way before social media brought us into a much smaller world, I did a fundraiser for Sudan. Obama was a junior senator in Chicago who was advocating for Sudan. And I wrote to him and I said, I am doing this fundraiser for Sudan, and I would love if you would come and just say some words about the work that you are doing on behalf of Sudan. And somebody in his office sent me back a beautiful form letter and said, nah, girl, but good luck. And then a couple years later, the man was president. So, you know, but in that moment, I have never forgotten Sudan, right? For some folks, where social media, right, and viralness is the first time they're hearing about things. And no shade to that. We get the information how we get the information. But for others of us who are old enough to remember the world when it was analog, we know just how far back the struggle goes. So moula robe is a stew that is made of lamb with lamb bouillon, yogurt, peanut butter, tomato paste, and then it is blended down till it is nice and smooth and emulsified. I like to think of moula robe as East Africa's version of like tomato soup, but way better. And so I wanted to make sure I got that for you. And then, yeah, I don't know if y'all know, I love Le Creuset. And so Pride, I got these beautiful ramekins with a matching Dutch oven. I wanted to make sure we brought that into the room as well. Everything here is done with intention and with deep love and gratitude for everyone in it. So, get into all of this amazing food. I'm gonna open up the wine, pour, and let's get into this conversation. So one of the things about Black August is that, so we doing a Black August special, but Black August traditionally, if you're really observing it, you fast. You fast for 30 days, okay? You break your fast on August 31st.
For 30 days.
For 30 days, we're fasting.
I like this way better.
You like this way better? What are we thinking? Are any of us incorporating fasting into like our rituals around resistance or around our own health or being connected to our body?
First thing I did was unplug off of social media.
So you're fasting digitally?
Completely.
I think for me, I will be fasting during the entire month of August.
Okay.
I fasted for the first time. You know, I grew up in the Black church.
Okay.
So there was always the Daniel fast, like during Lent. Mm-hmm. But I fasted for the first time for like 30 days during Ramadan
Mm.
in the spring. And I think that it was a very transformative time for me because I was able to reel in my attention and also really, I think, take stock of my hunger and desire. So I think that it is a really great exercise when you're wanting to focus and discipline the body, mind, spirit, and the habit mind.
Mm-hmm.
I am also going to get off of social media because one of the things I noticed about myself, and I've learned this about myself when I fasted during Ramadan, was there was one week where I read a book a day. And I would love for the month of August to deepen my study and to get back to that kind of place. Because once you go there, Zora Neale Hurston said you got to go there, know there. So I've gone there and I have read a book a day. Now I want that again. So I know that I can do this. I know that I can pull my attention in and do this kind of thing. And why not during this month when I can do it with other people? And I think that's the most beautiful part about it, is that you're not alone in this devotion, because we can see it as discipline, but we can also see it as devotion. You're not alone in this devotion, and when you break fast, you'll break fast together each night.
I was a little afraid and nervous to do it, right? Because there was such a pull for it. I think being so immersed in the state of grief this year had let me choose, like, what is my relationship with it and why? Who am I trying to inform my update?
Can I ask you what you were grieving? You don't have to answer it. Yeah. It can be deeply personal, but I do want to ask, because I feel like I've been grieving for 3 years, child.
There's so many different ways that grief has been present for me. And I think also, being Black and in the intersections of trans and first generation American, grief has been something, a relationship that is always at the door. Whether it's losing a sister from the harms of transphobia, or losing a sister friend from gender-based violence. And so particularly my circle has been Black women, and often seeing the pain and the labor of trying to heal a world that has been so painful and unsafe. And I think about, when we think about Black August now, there is a grief that is upon my body of the foresight that I see of how Black women would already be handled, because the relationship of how Black women are already handled when tears are shown. The ability to have access to softness is something that no one can wait for, particularly Black women. It's like, you got to take it. And so coming off of social media was like, I need to create something soft because something rough is coming. There will be an iron sharp moment. And if I don't take this moment now, then I don't know if I will make it mentally after.
I brought this food very intentionally as I was thinking about the menu. I said, we're talking about Black August, we're talking about liberation. I want to bring foods from places that are in the struggle, representative of the struggle, have come through some deep struggle. And we're watching this happen in real time, right? We just talked about, like, to know the world when it wasn't so small, where we could all be connected fiber optically through the press of a button in mere nanoseconds, right? Has brought what is happening in this world, and has been happening for a while, right? Like, people are talking about Palestine after October 7th, and I, as a 43-year-old woman who's getting ready to make my 44th rotation around the sun, remember talking about, like, I went through the Bush era, Like, I remember Occupy Wall Street when we were out there, we were talking about Palestine then. Like, I've known that Zionism was some real icky, dirty stuff that was a continuation of white supremacy and colonization. But there's a generation of people, even including in our age, that did not know that before, because so much of that information has been very intentionally and very carefully and very strategically presented to you in a very skewed way.
I was someone who, I will say, that I did not know what I did not know that I did not know. And so when the conversation around Palestine, I think I was working at Girl for Gender Equity, I was in search of, I need to know more because I'm missing something. And of course, I was affirmed by my circle. It was like, you're missing it because it was intentionally not shared with you.
Right.
Here's the thing. This is a country that has seduced us into loving
It's an experiment.
violence. We love violence.
Mm-hmm.
We can't turn our eyes away from it when we see it, or that we turn away from it because we're so desensitized to it because of the level at which we've become so enamored with it. So to be American is to love violence. Right? It is at its root, at its core, an anxious project. So when I see the long history of colonization, it's hard for us to turn our eyes to it because we can't even turn our eyes to our own enslavement. So the media, it is a bought thing. It is ran by the rich. So we see what they want us to see. And for our community in particular, we are so distracted by entertainment and celebrity culture that we can't even think for a second outside of our own condition. We have been programmed to care about ourselves so much, right? And our desires and wants for class ascension and property, whether it be people or whether it be homes or this or that we can't see outside of that. And so because we're so obsessed here, like we're always in an existential crisis. So when it comes to matters of international politics, it's hard for us to see or even fathom solidarity with other people because we're trapped here. And that's intentional, right? So I think Black August is the opportunity to come together and study together because we would want to for what is coming ahead.
But it's the heavy on together that worries me.
Right.
Because when I was 10, the first book that my father recommended to me and gave me and told me I needed to read it because he'd be checking in was the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Wow.
I love your dad.
Come on, Pete. Come on, Pete. We love Pete, right? And I remember I was a voracious reader when I was younger, right? I was growing up in struggle. I didn't take my first plane ride till I was 20 years old. We didn't really go anywhere, so books were my escape.
That's right.
Okay, books were how I went places. Books gave me my humanity in so many ways, or reflected my humanity back to me. And I had a propensity to veer towards Black writers like Toni Morrison, Zora Neale Hurston, Ntozake Shange. And I remember reading that book and then starting to have as much as a 10 or 11-year-old or a 12-year-old child can have an analysis of like Pan-Africanism, of a radical Black and militant movement for liberation. And one of the things that always seemed very conspicuous to me is that there wasn't no real appreciation for women and gay folks who were at the forefront of this. It was almost like it was an aside. Like, yes, okay, James Baldwin. We think of James Baldwin, but it almost felt like I look at old interviews and stuff for him, and it's obvious to anyone who's ever spent any time with anybody who is queer that James Baldwin was as gay as a Christmas tree. I mean, I knew that as a child, looking at old footage. Nobody didn't tell me anything. I had uncles who moved in the same manner, who had that friend or roommate they had been with for 15, 20 years. You know what I mean? Like, and it was like this open secret that nobody could say. And here was this man that was talking about humanity, full humanity, who had such a beautiful, eloquent analysis on it. And all I can remember thinking is being like, but 12-year-old, 13-year-old me who loved James Baldwin to this day, like have him on my altar, was like, but why he don't ever really say he gay? Like, why does it seem like everybody's dancing around that?
His political stance, I believe. I think he understood Blackness to be the center first because I think gay is a white political identifier in so much ways, and who benefits from actually naming that you're gay. What safety does it bring for a Black person at that time? Mm-hmm. And so it's much easier to focus on what we know is the racial tension than to be in the intersection of queerness, because at that, how can you think about, if you think about Black lesbians, how could you even sit, or same-gender loving, because that was the term that was used, same-gender loving. How could we even think about, or just when we think about James Baldwin, what was his safe container? For him to be able to express that, and how being gay was conflated with softness or sissy or less than, right? And I think he understood, I believe that he understood an assignment that was deeper at that time, that what will people respond to?
How do we get to the space where we start to understand that we can't have rituals like Black August, that we can't talk about Black liberation if we are not inherently also talking about those of us who have been the most historically marginalized in our communities, and do the work on remedying that first? Because you can't talk to me about white supremacy and be transphobic, because all you're doing is just reflecting white supremacy back to me. So I know I can't learn shit from you. I know you can't lead me. But there are still spaces that we can't say this. So like, where do we go from there? Because that, for me, has been wearing on me a lot.
Right. I mean, the root, I think, is like, we know the polar opposite of anti-Blackness and anti-woman, right, is to actually have an intimacy and love. And I think the world does not have an intimacy and love with Black women. Therefore, Black trans women also don't get to be seen. Right? I think I'm a product of a Black mom. So I can't sit here and just talk about my trans, not understanding the pain that she may not be able to see me is because she was not seen. And that there's an interconnection with that. I think it's a global conversation of how we really protect Black women, protect and defend Black women and women across all identity sections.
I mean, my thing is, I love and wholly support that. But I think the struggle is that we live in a captive society. So there is so much tension around the topic of transness, because transness highlights or pulls out, right, what it means to be Black. Right, because trans people are some of the most courageous people I know in taking back their bodies, right, in refusing captivity. So it's like, how are you framing transness, right? Or what is transness bringing up for you? And that's the thing. That's where we have to dial in this Black August, right? We have to listen to trans voices to understand that the trans voice is also the voice of freedom. It's the sound of Blackness. So I think that's where the tension lies, is that people are afraid of how trans they are, right? If we take it back to the Middle Passage, none of us are human. That's why I remind every Black person. That is why I identify as Black. Black is who I am politically, because it holds all of those things. Black is already queer. Black is already trans. Black is already woman. Amen.
Amen. to your point, Fatima, there was something that you said a few minutes ago, Tanya, about the American experiment. And I don't think you can fix it, because you can't fix something that's not broken. It is working exactly as designed. They just didn't want anybody at this table participating, right? And I feel like we as Black people have fed in, because in addition to the misogynoir, we are somehow fundamentally afraid of what is different and what may expose the difference of the community. Because I feel like as a little effeminate Black person over the course of my life, I felt a lot of what you have described about, I don't own my body, I don't own my tears,
right? I
do not have a place to participate in this. And frankly, it was Black trans women who said to me, you don't even talk like you think you're male. And I had literally had to look for people to tell me, you have a place in this. You know, there's a way that you get to participate too. And that was something I had to wait for people to give me. You know, because as a community, we didn't know how to give that to our kids.
The confidence, the affirmation to be who we are. It is community that gives us that. It does not happen in a silo. It is not in a vacuum. But the myth of capitalism and white supremacy tells you that it does. I remember growing up as a fat, Black, dark-skinned girl with nappy hair and lamenting about how terrible I felt about myself because other people treated me terribly. And I remember being like, oh, can't nobody tell you how to feel about yourself. You got to just let that roll off. It don't matter.
That's bypassing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because so much, I mean, this country thrives off of self-hatred, right? That the project of America is about you loving the idea of a free world, a new world, right? The new world doesn't happen without violence. So naturally, to love America is to love violence.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can't love yourself and also love America, because America needs you to love it.
Mm-hmm.
And to love it is to hate yourself.
Mm. Damn. Girl, where is the motherfucking collection plate? Because you be out here preaching. We about to start calling you Reverend Fatima. Right, hello. Let's take communion, honey. Please. Where are the wafers? This idea of blackness, the misogynoir, the idea of upholding empire, all of those things. As you chomp on that beautiful banana cake bread, that's what I call it. It's a bread recipe by Tyler Florence that I remixed to turn into more of a cake. Okay, we've got some infused cardamom maple syrup in there, some heavy cream, some fresh ripe bananas, some unbleached flour, okay, some farm-to-table eggs from my farm in the Bronx. And then I accompanied it with a brown butter, vanilla bean, spiced berry ice cream that I made myself from scratch. And so that is your ice cream. And then if you still got a little room, we have the milk tart. The milk tart, which translates literally into milk tart. It is a South African custard pie.
You know what? I have to say this just like right off the bat, because I've been eating your food my entire adult life, apparently. This is really fucking good. You, I don't know what's going on with you, but something good is happening, and please make it keep happening. This is really good.
I really appreciate that, because you know my dad, I've started to pick up the mantle in terms of my grandmother died, God rest her soul. She was the matriarch of the family. My dad is getting older. He's nearing his 70s. And I started doing a lot of the family events, Thanksgiving, family reunions. And my father, who taught me to cook and is a very proficient and good cook, called me last year on Thanksgiving. And he said, Tanya, you've always been a good cook. He said, but I don't know what's going on with you. But this is some of the best food I've ever tasted. And you're right, something is going on with me. Moving into my mid-40s, right? I'll be 44, so I'm there, baby. I'm breathing right on it.
Ooh.
I think a lot about what it means to be 50.
Let's not do that.
Right. Right?
Wait a second.
How are we showing up in intimate love, romantic love, sexual expression? Oh, I like that. Yes, take the custody. Okay, bitch.
Come on now.
Yes. I was just going to cut it like a pie, but you said no, spread it on a banana cake. Love. See, I'm thinking very fragmented and compartmentalized, but you say, here, these two beautiful things. Let's put it together.
Yeah.
How are you decolonizing your love practices? How are y'all showing up in love? Especially as queer people who sit at the intersections of transness, non-binary people. How are we showing up in love?
Permission to explore.
Permission to explore.
Yeah, I am giving myself permission to not be married to
That's
the
so
idea
beautiful.
of just monogamy or monogamous and how that shows up in terms of the capitalism of marriage and stuff like that.
The capitalism of marriage. Can we pause for a second? Cause you spitting hot fire like Dylan. The capitalism of marriage. What does that mean, sis? You might be going over some folks' heads right now. What is that?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, wait, that's a lot to unpack.
Start somewhere.
And I'm still in first draft, so I think I'm also.
Read me your first draft.
I'm still in first draft.
Read me your first
But
draft.
I think as a people,
Yeah.
we have to be okay with getting it wrong out loud sometimes. You know what I'm saying?
Get it out. So I think what I'm learning, and this is in some of my circle, is when you think about how benefits may work for folks, is that you have to be married to something to get something. And so I think, like, if you marry, you can get this benefit, and if you marry, you have these benefits, and we see it in every type of system, like whether military, whether other different forms, it's all systematic things that keep us married to a certain way of being. So I think the ability to explore is giving myself permission to understand how love can show up deeply and what my capacity of love is, what my capacity of loving and understanding another person and a body who has lived a certain amount of time before we have connected in this time, in this field, to be in consistent understanding of myself and what I don't know that I don't know, how I can sit with that person and create intimacy by understanding that maybe in tension, I may see them, but what I don't see is the 3-year-old or the 7-year-old or the 5-year-old, or how that may be present in with myself because I didn't have permission to love freely. And so the very act of dating someone, no matter what their gender is, because the permission is to explore with energy now. For me, it hasn't been tied to it. For me, it had never been tied, but there was assumptions about how I love based off of my femininity. So assumptions that I only date cis het men, which I think men are beautiful, particularly black men. I also understand that there's a spectrum of bodies and people that connect on a vibration and an energy to what I'm trying to manifest. And if I am manifesting anything at the root of me is that in partnership, that they're healing, that we're both collectively healing the things that are hindering us to manifest something greater that is transformative, whatever that may look like, whether it's owning land and having that land to be teachers or holders or something back to the environment, like really decentering human as well, because I think there's a relationship that we have to have with the environment, and we as human have gotten a bit selfish around the environment and the harm that the environment is going through, which impacts us. Yeah, I was being gentle.
Selfish.
I was being gentle.
We fucking up the whole planet,
like in a huge way, right? And so if I'm in relationship with anyone, I'm in relationship with that understanding as well, whether I have arrived to it or not.
America loves nothing more than a business. You will fare along better in America as a business more than an individual. That's law. Because America, as we see, right, as our country, right, is rearing its genocidal head, right, and
heavy on the genocide.
Yes, like that's why America and Israel are one and the same. That's one. They value property over people, right? But they value businesses. So the fact that businesses are valued over individual, it shows you where the value is placed. So there are so many people out here who feel like a failure because they don't have a marriage, when ultimately you should not arrive to that place until you are ready to be in that kind of business partnership with another person where you share assets, where you share this, where you share that. Right? Marriage is not about love. Marriage is about business. Who do I want to be in business partnership with for the rest of my life?
But you know what's so interesting? What I'm finding in the manosphere, though, is that so many of us, all along the gender spectrum, right outside of being men, are starting to really come to understand that. And the men are mad as a motherfucker,
absolutely.
Honey.
Because they don't have that social
They are
control.
mad.
They don't have that social
Because
control.
now women are saying, and non-men are saying, well, okay, fine, let's get married. But what's the benefit for me then?
Right. Are you going to be a man?
Right? More than that, are you going to be a viable and successful and productive business partner? I am not going to get into business with you and I'm committing myself to brokenness. That don't make sense. So if you want the benefit of not, what do I bring to the table, of me being a whole motherfucking table, setting the table, cooking the food that's gonna go on the table, then feeding all these little niggas that's gonna come to the table and need to eat, i.e. your heirs, then baby, you got to be a successful business partner.
Except you said man, and then you said making sense.
Mm.
Because the one who lives at my house is not participating in the sense making in that way. And like, is this my camera? Because one of the things that I feel like I want to acknowledge is like, he does his best. And sense making is not the thing that came from being a man, it's his household, right? So he cannot make sense of things with me in the same way that you were describing, because there's so many things that like we will have like a pause and we'll talk about. And I'm like, here's what I'm feeling in this moment. And he can't find it. Like he cannot find it, because true north for him is whatever's regular.
I'm gonna take a risk. And
No, say it.
I'm gonna
Say
take
it.
a risk. I'm gonna take a risk. I think.
Take off the mask.
Ooh, take off the. I think particularly men are
This wine is
conditioned.
kicking in now, baby. Yeah.
Right? Right?
We was getting
As
into the sweet
someone-
part.
As someone Caribbean, and you know when you are trained based off of your gender,
Yes.
physical
Come on, talk about it now.
physical attributes of providing is often the center, and so sometimes I think about the cognitive distortion where emotion and empathy is not in place because physical labor is often in place.
Say that.
I'm gonna let you sit with that.
Say that.
I'm gonna let you.
No.
I'm gonna
I'm
let
gonna let you sit
I'm gonna
with
let
that.
you sit with
I'm gonna
that.
drop that on you.
So my whole life, you don't let me sit with that. No, but I think you're so correct about that, because one of the things that my husband and I live with is the fact that when we started dating, he thought he was dating a man, and I did not think he was dating a man. Right? And there are things for him to process about who we are and what this relationship is that exists that exists within a gender binary that he did not think he was participating in.
Heavy on the
Also
binary.
Heavy on the binary.
Heavy on the binary.
Yes. And we talked the whole.
at church.
No, because you said that, and let me tell you, that hit. So I'm gonna take a risk with you.
You gonna take a risk?
Since you took a risk, I'm gonna take a risk too.
What's wrong with the binary?
Fatima,
I have to cover myself.
you ready to go, girl? Can somebody show Fatima out?
Fatima, you and I also live in a binary. And my husband thinks he doesn't. So he thinks he's in a space that is post-gender, and I know that I am participating in gender, and me saying that I am non-binary is a lot about me saying I'm not participating in manhood.
And I recognize how we're showing up.
Right, exactly.
I'm not participating in manhood.
I am not participating in manhood, I'm still participating in a thing. Right? And like, this is a thing that shows up. And people, and it's so interesting, because people will be very interested in it when it's sexual.
Right.
But when it's anything else, they're like, oh no, this is not the
Let me tell you
binary.
something.
Right, now we on a spectrum.
Right.
When it's time to pay the bills,
Right.
we on a
But
spectrum.
when your legs
When it's I was gonna say when it's time to bend me over,
Right.
and when I'm ready to be the top, it's a binary.
Can I say something?
Please.
I feel like sex or just desire generally, I think it reveals a lot about our honest selves, about who we are.
Come on, Fatima.
You know, because there are
Come
some
on, boo.
people, and that's why I asked what's wrong with the binary, not to just play some devil's advocate
Because the
seat,
devil doesn't need
but
an advocate.
exactly, you know, Satan will be Satan all by America's self.
Yeah.
But I asked that question because I think that a lot of times we can jump into gender theoretically and we can become a bit dishonest, right?
Yeah.
Because we can take certain stances intellectually, but in the practicum of it all, we operate in certain kind of ways. And I get
That's
it, because
exactly
that
it.
is
That's exactly
gender
it.
this is what we have been offered. This is the game.
A lot of us don't understand we in the game.
Yeah.
And a lot of
No,
us are not
exactly.
consenting. And I know for me, so much of, I theoretically believe in a spectrum. I know that I exist in a world where gender is the binary. I know that in my truth, I am working very hard to reject that binary in my life. It's the only thing I can have some control over. But that when I go out in the world, I'm a bitch. So for me, it is hard for me to come out and the young kids be like, I'm they, them, I'm non-binary. And I want to say that I do, because in my mind, like in my So my husband, I call my husband because it's just easier. We've been together 5 years. We raising children together. We don't need a ring. We don't need right. He is my husband, and I have adopted that language wherever I go.
We love the common.
But then I also have a girlfriend. It's my bitch.
Yeah.
I love her.
Yeah.
I love her down. That's my muñeca. Do you understand what I'm saying?
She's very
my little
Boricua.
yes.
Very
She's
all about
yeah.
it.
She's very Boricua while also being black. You understand? But it's not the same kind of black we grew up. It's a very like Brooklyn Boricua black. You know, and I'm aware of it when we have conversations sometimes. I'll be like, girl, you was mad Spanish, right? In that relationship, I do show up in a very masculine way.
No,
Sexually.
I saw, which I thought was very interesting.
Right. I open doors for her.
Right.
We fight about who's paying for stuff because I feel that it is my responsibility to pay for things. And I wear a dick.
Yeah.
How big is that?
Okay.
Usually we start at 7 inches with a good amount of girth.
I mean, that's reasonable.
Right. So for me in that space, that relationship, people talk about, like you said, people are dishonest. Yeah. But in my relationship with my girl, it is where I feel like I have the outlet to show up in my masculinity safely and honor it.
And be weaponized.
And it does not need, and I can do it with these long ass dick grabbing fingernails, because I love to grab a dick, honey. Right?
So earlier,
and I understand that line of thinking is because no matter how much I talk about gender as a spectrum, my lived experience has been that it is a binary.
And that is okay to be honest about that.
So
we can hold both ends.
Yes.
Because, you know, at my core, like I said earlier off camera, before we are these bodies, right? Because enslavement depends upon bodies. And when you get to the body, they have to categorize the body to enforce and uphold the enslavement, right? So before we are this body vehicle, we are spirits, right? So it's like I can hold both of those things, right? That at the spirit level, I'm beyond gender. But in this physical realm where I have to occupy the categorization of having a body, I live within the binary, you know, because there is euphoria there. Mm-hmm. And I have no qualms about saying how much I love being a bitch. It is who I am. It is who I have been.
And how much I feel so very limited by it.
Yeah, and same. But
even in my aesthetic,
and even
I look at my father, who I look just like. You see my father. My father walks into a room and he's so oblivious because he's such a nice man. And he does not realize my 6th grade history teacher, my doctor, they love my father. He is so handsome. They think he's so good looking. He just is so oblivious.
I might love your dad too.
You probably would. You probably would, honey. They love my father. I have my father's same looks. And as a woman, I spent my whole life being called ugly, being called a man, right? Being a man is supposed to be superior until they're ready to misgender you, to knock you down a few pegs and deny you your femininity.
That's right.
I am 43 years old, and as recent as 6 months ago, people were calling me a man, which now doesn't matter to me, because really in my body, that's what resonates with me.
Right.
But I also know what they're trying to do, right? It is steeped in colorism.
Oh, absolutely.
It is steeped in violent misogynoir. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so I used to say all the time, I swear to God, up until maybe like 2 years ago, I really wish I was a man, because if I was a man, I would have fared so much better. Everything that everybody resents about me as a woman would have made me successful as a man.
Not a black man. Yeah.
So for me,
Not a black man.
you know, like, that's why I say, like, I was telling somebody a couple years ago, like, when they were asking me, like, why you fight so hard for trans women, because I will literally fight you around women trans experience. I said, because when I tell you something, and this has nothing to do with biology or anything else, it is about the energy that when I'm in a space with trans women, it is really one of the very few spaces that I've been in my recent adulthood where I felt like I could relax.
Right.
I could be my true self.
Right. Talking about masculinity because of my relationship with the enforcement of it upon me.
Absolutely.
So I just want to hold that real quick so I can move through
And
that
let's
energy.
hold it with you. Let's hold it with you.
Similar.
And so when it comes to talking about the understanding and the empathization of men and the forcement of providing and things like that from a boy, yeah, there's an understanding of that happens when we're like having the conversation. I'm like, there's such an enforcement around that, but then also the enforcement of how we nurture sometimes boys but raise women. Where my mom may have not known, but she saw. So I feel like how some of the other girls was raised, I was raised. But then when I went around my dad's side of the family, it was like, you gotta do this. It was like, stop being soft, stop being feminine, stop being all these things. And it wasn't about a tangible task, it was a way of being.
Yeah.
They were trying to get me to shift however my tone of voice or my framing or my phrases or how I may sit or how I may fold my hands. There was such a pressure on those things. So I don't know, when we have these conversations, I think about the gender and the binary.
Absolutely.
I think that there is a
Absolutely.
relationship with that.
I think
That
our
happens.
parents were trying to keep us alive.
Well,
Yeah.
see, that's what I was going to say. I think they have this idea that somehow being a man protects you in this world,
Yes.
and that being a woman makes you vulnerable.
I mean, I hold space for that, but I also feel like some of our parents too, and some of our extended family actually just conceited and were complicit in fucking bias.
Yeah,
they believe
because
it.
they want-
some of them
Well, here's the
actually, they
thing.
don't give a fuck about your safety.
They want to be protected.
They-
That is the thing. Because it's like you are only projecting your fears onto me. You want to be protected. There is somewhere along those lines where someone has failed to protect you. So now you feel like the only thing that you can do for me is to protect me. But your protection has come at the expense
Of
of
me.
me. Because what you have done is harmed me when you wanted to protect me. So you have to, which is it?
I think I am starting to learn that romantic love, sexual love, is not right. It's not the end all be all. But also in my relationships, you were saying earlier, before we ever started recording, you were like, no, intimacy is a given. That's the baseline. That's where I start. Not like that's not the what I'm into. If you are trying to, you know that song, Ain't Nothing Going On But the Rent. You know what I'm saying? For you, it was like, ain't nothing going on but the intimacy. If we are not starting with that first, then there's nothing that comes after that. And so as I enter into my mid-40s and I decolonize the way that I show up in love, when I think about the ways in which I really try to get the binary up off my neck so that I'm walking my talk of a spectrum, it is me understanding that I require intimacy in my relationships.
Some of the most full relationships that I have are those that I share with my sisters and that I share with friends. You know, like I have not had a romantic relationship that has blown my socks off. But I have friends that have shown me love.
My whole life has changed because of deep, intimate relationships.
Yes.
With friends.
That's right.
Like when they come over
And like,
and that's
Black
our future.
sisterhood has literally saved my life.
Yes.
Mm. 23 years old, 2 babies, welfare, shitty apartment, shitty relationship, no knowledge of who I was and what I wanted to be. And it was Black women and Black queer people who stood in that gap to invite me to think about a reality that was like, who are you without trauma? Who are you when you give yourself permission to see yourself fully? And so for me, the first part of decolonizing love was developing a healthy love for myself.
That's right. Got to be in right relationship with you.
Yes. Fuck all of this. Can I be a good friend? Can I be a good girlfriend? Can I be a good husband? Right. Can I show up for me?
Me along the continuum. Because see, that's the thing where, once again, about America, right? We are presented these things in very limited ways, right? You are about to turn 44, but there is still an entire 43 years of personal history that is still in this body.
I think I'm challenged because the desire and the like I know I want to be in parenthood, but then I also sit with the being in relationship with myself, right? Because there's things that have been compartmentalized unintentionally around things I've experienced in my life that it was always put on the shelf, and now they're being, it's like jars dropping off the shelf. Like, I'm like, oh shit, I forgot that I needed to address that. I didn't know I had to address that because no one told me as a child I had to address that thing that I compartmentalized and put on the shelf.
Nobody told me I was going to come back to it. So you learn to bury it. You deny it.
Right. Until it haunts you.
You don't even get to be a victim. Forget being a survivor. Right. Because in order to be a survivor, you got to be a victim first. So if you don't allow me to be a victim, how the fuck do I ever survive?
You know, one of the hurtful things that I had experienced with someone is like, oh, you're living the victimization of your trauma. And it was like, I never even got to sit that I was in trauma. I didn't get to, as I was fat, I was black, I was effeminate, and what they call sissy. I was a sissy, is what I was called. And every day I left my house, I was followed by men asking me to give them oral sex before I can get to school. When I started to work and transition, the men that got out of jail would follow me and would literally be behind a tree jerking off before I can get on the train to go to work. That was my upbringing. And then to come home and my mom would be like, how was your day? It was good. All right. Nothing much.
And that's one of my fears as a mother. That I ask my kids how their day was and they just give me some sort of perfunctory, compulsory answer. But my, what I call first mother, right? Because I don't say biological or whatever. My first mother, the lady who gave birth to me. I think about how, like, I don't be calling her just tell her how my day is. When my daughters call me to just say hello, to tell me about some just random weird shit that happened that doesn't really have a point, I legit, to this day, be shocked. She trusts me. She enjoys my company. She sees me as somebody friendly. She was bored and she decided to call her mother.
Because you built a relationship not out of a need, though.
That is not a relationship that I ever knew with my own mother. And so for me, that's what decolonized love looks like. That says to me, I've done at least enough work that when this child, who is now walking into adulthood, sees me, who I said I was, and who I am were closely enough aligned that she trusts me. Because I don't trust my mama. But my daughters trust me. They call me 3 o'clock in the morning to say, the anxiety is a little thick today. I'm not sure where I got lost. So I just called you because I wanted you to remind me of who I am. That is what decolonized love looks like. Fuck a nigga choosing me. They're still trying to figure out if you are a good decision. And so what love looks like, decolonized love has to look like for you, is understanding that if you're going to stick around, that's going to be uncomfortable for you to hold, but you got to hold it. And I am not going to force my children into something that feels unnatural for them to make you comfortable. You have to hold the fact that, yes, my children will always be more important than you are. Always. Forever and ever. Doesn't mean that you're not important. It just means that right, wrong, and indifferent. If I have to choose between them and you, I'm going to choose them. I'm obligated to be a good person in order to love my children. God does not give you what you want. He gives you what you need. Well, they give you what you need. See how all of that gender binary shit will still pop up. God does not give you what you want. They give you what you need. I needed my children. I know that. But I'm trying to raise them not to need anybody else to love themselves. I have to model that behavior for them. And it's probably one of the hardest things I've had to do, one of the most honest things I've had to do. When I want to hide, when I want to delude, when I want to tell myself a bunch of bullshit. I remember that there's 6 little motherfuckers looking at me. And that part of who they are is going to be shaped in whether or not I walk my talk.
And we do need love.
And I want to be honest about the fact that also I popped out babies that I could not afford because I needed somebody to love me.
Jesus.
And that's been a very hard thing for me to reconcile with. There were a lot of black women who said it to me, but they said it in such mean ways. They were being misogynistic. You know what I mean? Like they were saying it like in such a way that it invoked shame in me. So I fought it. But I was like, if I'm going to do this work of reconciling with myself, because I don't really believe in healing in America, but if I'm going to reconcile with who I am, I got to get really honest with even the most uncomfortable bits. I popped out babies that I could not afford, that I traumatized.
And yet, you've done such a good job with them.
I can hold both those truths at the same time.
Right. But it doesn't matter, right? Like, you see them now. And they're extraordinary young women. Like,
They are.
Literally extraordinary. I talk about them all the time because they make such an impact when you interact with them.
But I grew up with them. And that is, we got to be honest about the fact that for a lot of us, that is deeply traumatic.
That's decolonizing. I think that when we can have those honest conversations, I think that we can begin to see ourselves not just as parent and child, but we get to see these people outside of their responsibilities to you, and we can be honest.
And that shit is hard.
Look in your child
because oppression,
talk about how I
a lot of times, starts right in your home.
Absolutely.
Your first bully, a lot of times,
It's your
is
parent.
somebody that lived in your motherfucking house, your parent. And so I give my kids permission to say no to me. But there are a lot of times that they say no to me, and that shit is visceral. I feel it in my chest. I feel deeply rejected. I feel entitled. What the fuck you mean no? All this shit I sacrificed for you? All of these ways that I amputated myself so you could live?
Guess what? I didn't ask you to do that.
Boom. And before I ever put them in a position that they have to say that to me, I said that I would do the work to check myself first. You do not congratulate a fish for swimming. I do not need my kids to kiss my ass or become some other version of themselves in order to placate me because I did what the fuck I was supposed to do as a parent.
But those fish are so obviously swimming. And that's,
Yes,
that's
but
a beautiful thing,
I think
right?
that happens with us where we want to bypass this, and we can't, because the children are not all right.
No, absolutely.
I want to talk about it, Fatima, because there's something that is coming up for you.
No, because I think that there is so much that parents can't even talk about, and that they can't face.
I hate parent groups because so many of us are
Can't face their
lying.
children because they can't face themselves. And I think that a large problem that we try to bypass because we think that people are all right, and they're not, because you don't know what's underneath the surface. You don't know what's underneath the surface. Yeah, they may be doing okay in life, but they're not okay.
Thank you for that, Fatima.
Fatima, Nala, Lee, this has been such an amazing Mama Tanya's Kitchen, the lunch table episode. We beyond lunch, honey. We did brunch because the sun is going down and is setting on us. We have talked about all the things. The on-camera conversation has not nearly rivaled the off-camera conversation. We have laughed. We have eaten, we have cried, we've talked about love, we've talked about sex, we've talked about politics, we've talked about liberation. So please just give me your last fleeting thoughts before we toast to ourselves and to a freer world as we roll into Black August?
My prayer is that you see your face in the mirror and you don't turn away from it. That you may see your face in the eyes of another and not turn away, but that you might draw nearer to thee. I don't believe that salvation depends upon my struggling. I speak against that. But find you somebody to struggle with and study in community and love, because that is where we must struggle in love, to love ourselves, that we might love another. It's not as cliche as we make it seem, but we have to rise to the love that we need so that we might experience what it means to love and struggle in community with one another. We're going to need that in these times because we are in the age of misinformation, and with the technological advances that we have, one of our main struggles is always going to be communication in the place of messages. So that's where we have to tighten. Don't let miscommunication keep you from the love that you need. Amen.
Amen.
I toast to that.
And she's so fucking fly, she don't turn the goddamn napkin holder into a ring, honey. Come on now. Come on now. Nala.
Oh, I'm still marinating in my words, but while you're talking, I thought about the Queen of the Nile flower and how it only gives access a certain time of year. And I think about the liberation of Blackness is that we get to still be intentional about how we give the world access to us. We get to still hold us as delicate as a flower. We get to still give ourselves that sweet, fragrant grace of not having all the answers and to be on a quest of answering with one another, to then hold each other, to then increase our capacity to love each other because we need each other.
We need each other.
And more importantly, to hold ourselves.
Tenderly.
Tenderly.
Heavy on the tender. Lee.
Well, I am very grateful that you have given me many beautiful Black people to love today. I've learned a lot. I've thought a lot. I've been pushed in my thinking. And I feel like I've had some people receive me in some really beautiful ways.
Yes.
So thank you, my dear friend. Thank you, my new friends.
Yeah.
This is really, really fantastic, and I'm just really grateful.
Would y'all come back and have a meal at Mama Tanya's kitchen?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Some pork chops. Next time we have some other pork chops.
I would have Mama's Tanya kitchen do a field trip to my house.
Okay, we can
I
do
was
that.
just thinking
Because I
if
have
you
not
wanna
been
come
to
to
your
my
place.
You have
And
not
I know
been
your
to
place
my
is
place.
bougie. You got a bougie ass job, corporate America. So yes, we can do it at your place. Let's do it at your place. Let's bring all this equipment. And then I'll leave you to clean it all up.
We can do a field trip?
We could do a field trip. Yes. So I would like to ask us to raise our glasses. I want for us to hold space for one another, to hold space for those of us who might be watching in this moment, who may have received a message they didn't even know that they needed. Maybe something that freed them, something that affirmed them, something that reflected their best selves back to them, some uncomfortable truth that they knew that they needed to contend with. Maybe a little key on a day where they couldn't find the laughter. I want to toast to that. I want to toast to our audacity, to our bold and courageous imagination, to the dismantling of needing safe spaces so that all spaces may be free and safe, that we no longer need any more disclaimers, that when we say Black Lives Matter, that it is inherent that all Black lives matter, that we are all seen as full and free and juicy, delicious, loving human beings where joy and pleasure is not shameful, but literally the conduit to get yourself to the next plane of freedom. Amen. Ashe. Amen.
Yes.
Yeah. Until next time, buettes and booze. Ciao.
Ciao.